UNIDO was privileged to work very closely with the government of China and organized a delegation at that time in 1978 of senior government officials because the government had decided on an opening up policy and they were keen to look at the successes in some of the countries. So that's its history. Today, what we see as Shenzhen started with that.
Awesome. And I had not realized this connection with Shenzhen and UNIDO. So fascinating. And when one goes to Shenzhen, you hear about it as an old fishing village and what it has transformed into. It's like the Silicon Valley of Asia. Greetings. My name is Siddharth Chatterjee, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in China, and welcome to Delivering as One, a UN in China conversation. In this podcast, we highlight the heads of UN agencies in China who shape our diversity, discover their motivations, and find out about their work here on the ground. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Kargbo, representative and head of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization's regional office in China. Mr. Kargbo is a Sierra Leonean national, joined the United Nations in China in 2021. Stephen, welcome to Delivering as One.
Thank you, Sid. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about your early life, education, work, and tell me about your growing up, your studies, and your early career.
Well, I would say I had quite humble beginnings in a family of 6 siblings and we grew up in rural Sierra Leone. So that's basically about where my whole life started, and I completed my undergraduate degree way back in 1988, and then started work as a school teacher, and that has been 34 years now since then. But after that, for a couple of years, then I worked as a development director of a development agency in the country before I proceeded to study in Germany. But I also had some work period with the United States Peace Corps program in Sierra Leone. Yes.
Wow.
So I was their community development director and coordinator.
And this is the US Peace Corps office
Peace Corps office
in Sierra Leone.
In Sierra Leone. Yes.
I've always called the United States Peace Corps the Marines of the humanitarian work.
Indeed.
They do outstanding work.
Indeed, outstanding work, and it was a privilege to work with them for a couple of years while I was there, before I proceeded for my studies in Germany, where I did both my master's and PhD. Had a few opportunities to do some teaching-related work and research. Then I went back to Sierra Leone in 2006, immediately with UNDP for 2 years, and then I joined UNIDO in 2008. So since then, I've been with the UN system.
Since 2008?
Since 2006.
2006.
Yes, with UNIDO since 2008.
Great. And after that?
Well, after that, basically, I did a couple of years, 5 years, 7 actually put together in Sierra Leone. Then I was assigned to Ethiopia in 2013, where the original office in Ethiopia, I was privileged to cover Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, and of course the African Union Commission. So those years were also very rich. Then, after some years, 3-4 years, I was assigned to Tanzania, where I was also responsible for Mauritius and the Secretariat of the East African Community. Last year, then at the request of the Director General, at that time he was Mr. Li Yong, Chinese. He asked me to come over to China, and it was a privilege. And here I'm here in China since 9th of November 2021.
So that really brings me to the second question. So that means basically the Director General said, Stephen, you've done great work in Tanzania, now head to my country and get to China.
That was what made it quite a privilege, I would say, So I would probably say second time lucky to work in the home country of the Director General of UNIDO. Before, when I was in Sierra Leone, it was during the reign of Dr. Kande Yumkela. And then here in China, in the initial year or the final year of Dr. Li Yong. So that's how I came here, so I really consider it a privilege. And I think I have been always impressed with what I've seen so far, and I look forward to more years serving here.
Fantastic, yeah, and we are very happy to have you leading the UNIDO team here and as a member of the UN country team as well. So let's come to your organization. So what does your organization do to support the people of China, the country's priorities, and the UN family at large?
Well, as you know, Sid, UNAIDO is a specialized agency of the United Nations, and we're mandated to promote inclusive and sustainable industrial development. And that means an industrial development that is cognizant of the value of the environment and that makes sure that economic growth does not leave anyone behind. It's socially inclusive. So here in China, we have a very long history. I have to say, way back to the 1970s, and we have in those days, I would recall from some of the records we have, UNIDO was privileged to work very closely with the government of China and organized a delegation at that time in 1978 of senior government officials because the government had decided on an opening up policy and they were keen to look at the successes in some of the countries. So that's its history. Today, what we see as Shenzhen started with that. So we always are proud to be associated with that history, and there are many more industrial parks in China that we believe, because of the government leadership, it's way bigger than the UNIDO story now. But we always are privileged to be associated with it. But fast forward, China today is like a dual member state, is recipient of technical support from UNIDO on one hand, but also is an exporter of technical support to other developing countries. So we have a multifaceted presence in the country. So we have the regional office, which is based here in Beijing, but we also do have other offices, including the Investment and Technology Promotion Office here in Beijing. We have also a similar outfit in Shanghai, and we have the International Center for Small Hydropower Development in Hangzhou. We have the International Hydrogen Engineering Center based here in Beijing at the Tsinghua University. We also have the UNIDO Center for South-South Industrial Cooperation. So through these outfits, we have a privilege of working very closely with different entities in China, private sector, as well as government entities and academia. So in that regard, we see that we have a great opportunity to contribute to China's industrialization, but also to China's sharing of experiences with the globe.
Wow, awesome. And I had not realized this connection with Shenzhen and UNIDO. So fascinating. And when one goes to Shenzhen, you hear about it as an old fishing village and what it has transformed into. It's like the Silicon Valley of Asia.
In a way, yes, in a way. So, and in fact, on that basis, quite recently, the UNIDO South Center for Industrial Cooperation has worked with the government entities, and we have promulgated or published a global guideline on the establishment of industrial parks. Mm-hmm. So this is now benefiting going to benefit not only new industrial parks in China, but industrial parks in
across
other parts
the world.
Of the world,
Particularly from South-South point of view.
South
learning.
Exactly. So
Fantastic.
in Ethiopia, industrial parks have been established there, in Tanzania, in other countries, and certainly the lessons from China would be very, very, very handy going forward.
Fascinating. Right. So could you provide us with some insight on the key beneficiaries of your organization in China?
In China, we have beneficiaries, I would say, at various levels, because our work here also is more or less in those three levels. At a macro level, we work mostly with government entities on policy advice, helping to design and influence industrial policy of the country, but also at meso level, we work with various government institutions, the Ministry of Commerce, for instance, the Ministry of Information Industry, Ministry of Ecology, and their sub-entities, including CSET, including DTED. So all of these are entities that we work with. So in one hand, they can count as a first line of beneficiaries, because Our work sometimes involves capacity building related work because of our cooperation. So they are one line of beneficiaries. Also, I would include probably universities in that regard. We also have a good partnership not only with Tsinghua University on the green hydrogen, but we also have a partnership with Nankai University where we have young graduates come to UNIDO and get them exposed to international development, especially on related to industrialization. So these are, a set of beneficiaries. But also at the meso level, some of the institutions include enterprises that are interested in, for instance, in trade. We help to build capacity with respect to quality and standards. We help in the harmonization of regulations with other international entities. So these also serve as our beneficiaries. But also we do have the usual traditional beneficiaries that we say the communities, where we undertake specific value addition projects, so for instance in bamboo, or maybe upgrading of small hydropower centers or plants. In China, we have across the country about 25 that are being upgraded right now through our International Center for Small Hydropower in Hangzhou. So this translates in terms of individuals, beneficiaries, actually into huge numbers that are benefiting from the electricity, not only for their homes, but also for their productive activities, including small businesses that they run. So these are the range of beneficiaries that we have in China, but also typically in any other partner states that we work with.
Fantastic. Right. And can you identify some of the remaining development challenges faced by China in the coming years, and how UNIDO, as part of the UN family here in China, will assist China in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals?
China has had, as we all know and have continued to acknowledge, has had a remarkable story of making a huge dent on poverty, which is what every country aspires to do, and serves as an example for the rest of the world. And I think that they have done that on a trajectory that is very familiar to the industrialized or developed countries of today. There is not a single country in this universe that has come to human progress without the pathway of industrialization. This is why we continue to emphasize that industrialization is actually the backbone of any development progress. And we believe that China went through a similar pathway as many other countries have done. Nonetheless, there are still areas that would require improvement. And I would say one of them relates to developing the competitiveness of China's industry. China, of course, is the manufacturing hub, is the manufacturing powerhouse of the world. But there is need to transition from a typical traditional manufacturing style to a more innovation-driven type of manufacturing. So I think this is a challenge, but this is also an opportunity that we are working together with the government and relevant entities. And this means China's focus, even in their 14th five-year plan, on new energy vehicles and on new sources of energy to help decarbonize the industry, to reduce pollution and emissions. This is already what the government has tackled head on. And as you know, we're very, very, very delighted to work with China in this regard. And in particular, Goal 9, which of course is not the only goal that UNIDO is concerned about, but because it has the central mandate of UNIDO, which is industrialization, it links with infrastructure as well as innovation. So these are elements that the government of China is already working on, and we are very happy to provide our global expertise to bear on these efforts of the government. But also then the second area of challenge, which is closely linked with this innovation, is the area of environmental challenges. I think China is increasingly appreciating the importance of, has done so in the past, I must say, but increasingly recognizing the importance of the circular economy. The essence of reducing the environmental footprint, not least because of the benefits that are associated with it, but because also more and more, even the general population demands that as part of their value system. And because of the increase in trade also, many customers are demanding a certain level of norms in the production and of certain goods. So the area of reducing environmental footprint and reducing emissions, especially as they link to energy, is an area that remains a challenge. And this is why the partnership we have with the Tsinghua University, for instance, in the developing the technology on green hydrogen is going to be significant going forward, because we are using that platform to create partnerships with other entities around the globe, in Canada, in US, in UK, to help right from the outset to have harmonized standards and regulatory systems that can fast track the development of that industry. And I see that happening in the coming years. Already COP27, we have a side event there around hydrogen energy. So we think that this is an area that will continue to work with the government of China, but of course also on the fourth industrial revolution, which we see today leapfrogging into automated production systems, and this is going to be the order of the day. China is registering, thousands, hundreds of thousands of patents in different technologies. So we are very happy to be in this space and to continue to work with the government of China in this, I would say, two key sets of challenges. One relating to competitiveness of the economy, as I already mentioned, and moving towards innovation, greening of the economy, and then second, a little bit more to the environmental side, in particular, getting environmentally friendly sources of power and energy in the country. So we, as you know, we look forward to this continued work with respect to SDG 9, but also with respect to other sustainable development goals, including one on employment, on gender, and so on. So you know them as much as I do. This is our pledge. And we do have, in fact, with the government of China, a 5-year program already that we signed, 2021 to 2025. This is, in my estimation, the largest country program for UNIDO globally. It's about 165 million US dollars. So we think that through this country program with the government of China, we will deliver some concrete results going forward and in helping to address some of the challenges. China and UNIDO have a long way to go, and we would see, as I mentioned, apart from the historical changes that has happened here through our partnership, China has become, one of the strongest supporters of UNIDO. It's number one within assessed contribution to UNIDO. So I think that the partnerships is going stronger and stronger, and I have no doubt that it can only go stronger going forward.
Excellent. So tell me, just connected to that, President Xi Jinping, made a very commendable statement about the 2030 carbon peaking and 2060 carbon neutrality agenda. How do you think UNIDO and the broader UN family can help with that ambition of China to achieve carbon peaking by 2030? I think if China will be able to do it, I'm sure the rest of the world will be able to get some really good ideas out of it.
I think three main, I would say two main areas that relate to emissions that I think in China can make a major difference when they are dealt with. One is related, as I mentioned, relates to energy, and second relates to transportation. So with respect to energy, the key thing is replacement of
the transition from fossil fuels.
Transition from fossil fuels to cleaner energy. This is a major
just transition.
Just transition, and it would involve replacement of huge industrial equipment, including boilers, which are in China probably among the major consumers of coal energy. So this is an area where we think that China itself needs no convincing about the importance of this just energy transition, and they are already making significant steps in that direction. And on transportation, which is basically the second related big emitter, new energy vehicles and battery-powered electric vehicles and mobility systems are going to be key going forward. And there are technologies here. CATL, which is the largest battery producer in the world, has its plants in Yibil, in Sichuan, and I was privileged to visit this facility, and you would see that they're already way ahead in terms of what needs to be done, and certain production plants or manufacturers are already going 100% electric. So I think this is an area that we will continue to work with China, where China will need support. And I mentioned the hydrogen energy. We saw the Olympics, for instance. I was informed that about 850 buses they are run on hydrogen fuel cells, and this is the energy of the future. So if this can replace fossil fuels going forward, I think this will be major. But on a smaller extent, also is appliances. I think that it's important to also keep an eye on replacement of heavy energy consuming appliances to more efficient ones. So
Air conditioning,
sometimes even the type of refrigeration systems we use and the like. So these are areas that will continue to work with China going forward. And of course, the GDI is key to NATO's work. And I think we already, the country program that we signed with China has specific reference on the Global Development Initiative, because we signed it early this year, just after the conference we had with the government at the invitation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the GDI. So we very much believe in the need to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs, but also on the need to expand the partnerships around that. And I think that's what GDI is about, and this is why we are fully behind it.
Excellent. Very helpful. What a great insight over there. So tell me, now let's go to you as a person, as a leader, as a father, as a family member. What is your daily life like? What does it look like in your role?
Well, it's interesting. I live here with my family, so I have two daughters with me here and my wife, of course. So a typical day for me starts around 5:30 a.m. in the morning. I do a little bit of running, only on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, not as efficient as you are, Sid, I know. But this is typically my day, and usually by 7:45 I'm in the office. So on some days not, but on average I'm there by 7:45. And bang, my first round of work is about checking my emails, seeing which ones are urgent and important, because some might be, and then making round of some readings, news, and maybe some interesting articles that relate to those work, those mandates, things about COP and those type of things. So these are usually the warm-up type of things that I do in the morning, and soon afterward I head to my colleagues' offices, which I call greet the colleagues moment. I do that almost every day. Go to each office and just chat with colleagues. How are you? We talk about pending tasks. We talk about new tasks, and that's my quick run before I settle down to what I usually call high concentration tasks. And this can be anything from reviewing a document, reviewing a report, preparing a letter, this type of things that would really require my mind to focus, would keep me for going for a long time. And on typical days, which for us means attending many meetings, also is another segment. So it doesn't happen every day, but because I am also in the UN country team for Mongolia, for example. So I have double UN country team meetings, I have double SMT meetings and the like. Exactly. And then also related work, and sometimes also seminars, webinars, those type of all the preparation that goes with it. So these are the things that take my work life, and I try to close by 5. Usually stay a little bit longer, but I try to end my day around that, and then when I'm back home, just a little time with my kids, before I go to bed quite early. Before 10, on average, I'm on my bed. So this is typically what my day looks like. So on some days, obviously, I also pay a bit more attention to my relation building representational role, because I see three elements of my work here. One part is more representational, relational work, and then there's a bit of managerial work, which I just mentioned, with staff and signing the usual document that we don't like to see, payments here and there and there, and, but also programmatic, component of things where you may have a project that you're looking at, a concept that you need to review, a report, and so on. So this basically my typical day. Weekends are mine and my family's. I'm a Christian, so Sundays I go to church, and this is more or less the free, if you like, the free day. Even for us, I usually don't like taking engagements on Sundays. Sometimes on Saturdays I do. So that's more or less what my day looks like. Fantastic. Once in a while I might cook, but not quite often.
Yeah. So tell us the next time you cook, we will come. And I'm a fan of Sierra Leonean food, and your spices are just incredible.
Thank you. When next you come out, do you cassava leaves? Eh?
Oh, that would be lovely. Okay, so tell us what delivering as one means to you, Stephen.
Delivering as one, frankly to me, simply means joined up. Delivery, joined up, working together for specific results with two or more UN agencies. And within the context that this involves joint planning or some form of coordinated planning, it involves not only planning but budgeting, an indicator framework, and a reporting framework. These for me are the key elements that means delivery as one within the UN agency. Of course, in a more in the language of the UN, more or less is one leader, one budget, one framework, and so on. But from a practical point of view, I think that for me, delivery as one simply means we are 2 or 3 UN agencies join up together, and which is of course under the leadership of the RC, deliver on specific results on the basis of a coordinated or joint plan, budget, indicator framework, and reporting framework.
Great. So final question, what in your view would make an ideal UN resident coordinator?
In my view, I think that an ideal UN resident coordinator is, first of all, as the name implies, is a coordinator. So I would think that an ideal one, and that sounds like a simple word, but it's not easy. It's one that is able to bring together and harness the strengths of the individual UN entities in the country towards delivering as one, as we just spoke, and ensuring that no one UN agency is left behind. So this is quite a challenge, but I think an ideal resident coordinator should be able to do this and do it in a way that brings together. And this means oftentimes you're talking of 20 plus agencies, so it's quite a tough job, but ideally this is the assignment of a UN resident coordinator. And if I dare to be a bit more idealistic now, I would add also that an ideal UN resident coordinator should be a leader in the sense that he's able to see the bigger picture and able to drive the entire UN country team towards that bigger picture. And this can be seen differently, but I think that any UNRC that is not able to do that, it's probably not ideal from my point of view. So, but not only being a leader, also a learner. A learner, as I mentioned, that you have 20 plus UN agencies. So in a way, the resident coordinator should be able to have a quick understanding and appreciation of what the different mandates of these agencies are, what their strengths are, and how he can bring them together. And this requires a solid assignment. It's not everybody's cake to eat. So it's quite, for me, ideally, a resident coordinator that appreciates what UNIDO stands for example. But I say it from the point of view of UNIDO, I think every other head of agency would say the same. So in that respect, I think that you should have this understanding and only of the collective, but also of the specific as relates to particular agencies. And lastly, I would say, and this is a little bit, in my view, a little bit mundane, but I would say must also be a lawyer. A lawyer in the sense of having the ability to defend the norms and values of the UN system. Having the ability to speak for the voiceless and not only for the few. So, and I say this is a bit tricky because while it's a lot easy to throw that kind of thing to resident coordinators. I've seen resident coordinators being asked to say things that nobody else wants to say. So, and I'm saying this from what I've seen in many. This is not. I'm not saying China. I've been. I don't know how many resident coordinators, or many of them. So in Sierra Leone, with several when I was in Ethiopia, many also in different countries. Of course, in Tanzania, many. So I'm saying this that I have seen situations where, I tell myself, thank God I'm not a resident coordinator in that sense, because you have to stand for things that many people would probably shy away from. And I think a good and ideal resident coordinator is one who is able to take the stance, of course, in a friendly way, not confrontational manner, but making sure that he is the voice or she is the voice of the voiceless. So this is my view.
Great. That's very, very helpful to have. Well, thank you very much, Stephen, for sharing your story, sharing your time with us today. If you would like to learn more, visit china.un.org or follow the UN in China on our Twitter. Join us next time for another installment of Delivering as One, a UN in China conversation. Thank you again, Stephen.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having this conversation.